So once upon a time, there was a guy named Saban. He found a thing in Japan called Super Sentai that he turned into a thing in America called Power Rangers. And that Power Rangers thing made Saban a bunch of monies. And he sold the Power Rangers and other things to Disney for a bunch of monies. And Disney did some stuff with it until they were content with repurposing old Power Rangers shit in 2010, and that's when Saban bought Power Rangers and other stuff back from Disney, and he made more Power Rangers until he decided he wanted his money back, is what he wants. He wants his money. It's his money. Give him his money. So Hasbro gave Saban his money, and now they got Power Rangers and proceeded to do nothing with it. Sounds about right. Okay, so backtracking a little here. The first season of the so-called Neo Saban era was Power Rangers Samurai, a season that I know almost nothing about since the most I saw were a couple episodes before I decided, not for me. All I knew was that Samurai often gets a bad rap for being a poor man's carbon copy of the original Sentai was based upon, Samurai Sentai Shinkenger, which I also saw a couple episodes once upon a time, and all I can say is, blessed be the days when they took a Super Sentai show about a virtual video game gone wrong, turn it into a low-budget spacefaring epic, and call it Power Rangers in Space, where almost half the series took place on Earth, but that's another story. Anyway, somewhere along the way I found myself with a copy of Power Rangers Samurai for Nintendo Wii, released in 2011 courtesy of Bandai Namco, or Namco Bandai, or Bando Namkai, or whatever they're calling themselves, I don't know. So that means I've got some catching up to do. So, Power Rangers Samurai is the story of 5 teens who are part of a clan of samurais who become Power Rangers to take on Master Xandrid and his army of Nihilocks, whose main goal is to flood the earth with the waters of an evil river, or something to that extent. Basically, this is a retelling of 20 episodes worth of Power Rangers Samurai, right up to the final duel between Red Ranger Jaden and half Nihiloc, half human swordsman Decker, played by former Wild Force Ranger and
Checkpoint
Rick Medina. I really wish I were making that last part up, but anyways. This is the first Power Rangers console game since 2007's Super Legends, and the first to grace a Nintendo home console since 2004's Dino Thunder on the GameCube, not counting a number of titles released for the various handhelds, which, by the way, Samurai also made its way over to Nintendo DS. But the gist of the game is that you pick a Samurai Ranger, you run around levels beating up Nihilocks with your martial arts and weapons, you eventually fight a boss, you watch a couple stock clips from the show that I'm not showing here for obvious reasons, along with some cutscenes comprising static imagery, talking heads, text boxes, and some voice acting provided by the actual cast. And when the boss goes big, you summon your Megazord and you fight the big bad monster in a rhythm-based waggle fest. Lather, rinse, repeat for about 10 missions, and call it a Samurai Day. No, wait, that's the other one. Sorry, my bad. So Power Rangers Samurai makes use of the Wii Remote and Nunchuck combination, which entails some waggling. Waggling doesn't play a major role in Samurai, however. You mostly perform motions in order to draw symbols that pop up on screen every so often, as well as for the rhythm-based Megazord battles. But for the most part, you're controlling your Power Ranger with the stick and pressing buttons on the remote and nunchuck to perform various attacks. Even the menus are navigated using the stick or D-pad to highlight options rather than using the pointer feature of the remote to pick options, which would make more sense on Wii to do, but anyway, the majority of the game has you guiding your Rangers through fairly linear levels with a fixed camera perspective, giving you some lay of the land, but not a whole lot. Occasionally finding breaks to collect icons that will restore health and spirit energy, the latter of which is required for special attacks. Also on occasion you'll come across collectibles such as Ranger movie clips or Beetle Megazord collectibles, which are there to be collected and stuff. The game gives you 5 playable Power Rangers to choose from, with a Gold Ranger added to the roster later down the road, although some missions will force you to use only one specific Ranger due to plot-related reasons, or 2 if you're playing with a second player. While the game is largely run through a level and gets stopped by Moogers every so often before eventually reaching the boss, it's not all pointless button mashing. It's mostly pointless button mashing, but sometimes you'll need to do some extra bits to open up progress, such as moving exploding barrels near destructible walls, or pushing deadly tops towards impassable boulders to break them apart to move onwards. It's nowhere near as deep as I'm making it out here. It's still largely a button masher that adds in a bit of waggle to justify the existence of this game on the Wii, and honestly, that's a bit of an issue for me. Power Rangers Samurai's only use of waggle comes in the form of moments where you're prompted to recreate the Rangers' morphing symbols with various motions. There's even a mode where you can practice your motions. Thing is, motion detection is somewhat imprecise, resulting in moves not registering as correct even if you nail the motion perfectly. And if you were to get the motions perfectly, it doesn't seem to have much effect on gameplay. Fail to do the motion properly and your Ranger will still morph. Same with the Megazord battles, which has you waggling your nunchuck to block and your Wii remote to attack in the rhythm-based minigame of sorts. Ultimately, Power Rangers Samurai is nothing special. It is a very rudimentary game. Like in terms of beat-em-ups, brawlers, hack and slash, whatever, this is bottom of the barrel, lowest common denominator TDM that you're just absent-mindedly whacking your way through all these similar looking levels. Running through levels, getting stopped by encounter points, making your way to the boss, and occasionally doing the waggle to do the killing moves and such that don't matter because you'll do the moves anyway and whatever. I'm not going to say that this is a bad game. It's not. It functions, it does what it does competently enough, the missions seem to follow the plot of the episode that it attempts to adapt, if they can't be bothered to feature clips from the show instead of doing this weird cutscene style or whatever, but it does what it does just fine. And the Megazord battles, whether they're waggle-based rhythm games or quick time sequences, it exists. That's all I'll say. It just exists. It's content to exist. And that's all you can really say about it. It exists. Deep, thought-provoking analysis right there, folks. It exists. Anyways. Power Rangers Samurai's graphics can be best described as functional, average fare for its day on a non-high-definition console. It's neither the prettiest looking thing nor is it the ugliest. It gets the key bits right. All the Rangers and monsters look the part. You can easily recognize them and tell them apart if you're especially familiar with this incarnation of Power Rangers. The animation is smooth enough and not completely broken at times. The scenery is somewhat generic and boring, but otherwise looks competently assembled. It is the bare minimum of an average-looking Wii video game circa 2011. Cutscenes will often feature stock video clips from the show, but mostly comprise talking heads and text boxes over static imagery, with the cast from the show delivering even drier performances than on the actual show, which I suppose is par for the course with these Power Ranger games from back in the day. So I turned off the music here for obvious reasons, but I'd imagine a lot of the tracks are just ripped from the show itself, including the Samurai theme song, which is just a rehash of the old Mighty Morphin Go-Go Power Rangers theme that actually most of those shows during the Neo Saban era was just rehashing the Go-Go theme as if they couldn't be bothered to come up with something more original. But anyway, the music, when muted, also mutes the videos, which, well, you have subtitles to read, so that's something. Sound effects are stock sounding sound effects, nothing special, nothing really to add here. It exists.
I've got more symbol power.
Overall, the most you could say about Power Rangers Samurai is that it is a very functional Wii game that does what it does competently enough, adds a bit of needless waggle to justify this being a Wii exclusive, and ultimately does little more than to exist in a crowded sea of licensed kit stodge that has flooded the Wii River in much the same way the Nilox wish to flood the Earth. It might be enough to entertain the kids for a bit before they move on to something else, and, well, I gotta be honest, this wasn't as much of a waste of time as the Island of Dr. Frankenstein was, so score one for Power Rangers Samurai on the Wii, I guess. I suppose. Anyway, not a terrible game in the slightest, but not terribly exciting either. It merely exists. It's more than content to merely exist. It's probably worth checking out if you really need your Power Rangers Samurai fix, but you have far better options out there, so...